Good morning, good morning. As breakfast is about to be served, let me introduce myself. I'm Mary Ellen Iskendarian, President and CEO of Women's World Banking. And I didn't realize how overcome with emotion I would be in being in person in a room with all of you. This is so wonderful to see all of you in person. It's just a great, great pleasure to welcome you here today. And actually, while we're talking about in-person events, let me make a shameless plug. I hope all of you will mark your calendars for Women's World Banking's next big in-person event, our Making Finance Work for Women Summit, which will be held in Dubai next February 14th and 16th. We very successfully transitioned the event into a digital event during COVID, but we're so excited about its return to a live event. Now, you'll find a small gift on the table. As the author of this gift, it's very near and dear to me personally. But inside, you'll find a bookmark that has a QR code that will take you right to the registration page for the summit. So you have no excuse when we would love to see you all there in Dubai in February. But let's move on to today's event, which is about the need for sustained, targeted collective action at both the global and the local levels to accelerate women's digital financial inclusion. Despite the tremendous gains that we've made in women's access to financial services globally, there's still around 742 million women who remain completely excluded from the financial sector, and millions more are still woefully underserved. Many of these women, as you'll hear from our panel later this morning, are entrepreneurs who are resourceful, driven, skillful at managing their own micro-businesses, but many of them lack the financial support, skills, and technology to grow those businesses. As I was planning my remarks for this morning, I recalled an anecdote from the book that you have on your table. It's the story of a Nigerian woman entrepreneur named Ime, and the impact that a small digital savings and credit account had on the growth of her business and on her family, particularly in times of great economic instability in Nigeria. She has a small market stall that sells, for those of you from West Africa, you'll know okazi leaves. They're used in a soup, a traditional Nigerian soup called afang, that's served at holidays and weddings and celebrations. She started her business with just $31 that she and her husband had accumulated painstakingly under their mattress at home. But recognizing that that might not be the most efficient way to accumulate funds to grow a business, she opened her first bank account. It was an account called the Beta Digital Savings Account, and it was introduced by Diamond Bank, which is no longer in Nigeria, but I'm delighted to say that Access Bank, which acquired them, is still distributing that Beta account. It's been very successful for them. There were several reasons that she was able to open that account, though. First was that the Central Bank of Nigeria had been very farsighted and had pioneered a tiered know your customer approach, which is a deliberate attempt to bring more people into the formal financial system, many of whom, like Ime, just didn't have the required proof of identification and other documentation that it typically took to open a bank account. The second reason was that Diamond Bank had made a strategic decision to design a product that was based on the traditional deposit collector model, the SUSU model, that women were already really accustomed to and comfortable with. They also took great pains to balance the high tech of the digital product with the high touch of an in-person customer service team called Beta Friends. Ime's story came to mind for me because I think it shows not only how powerful collective action and action by many different parties can be, but how absolutely essential it's going to be to unleash the potential of women's entrepreneurship. Regulators can ensure a policy environment that addresses women's needs and the unique barriers that they face. Banks can recognize that business owners like Ime are valuable customers, and it's a commercial segment worth exploring with relevant products. And that brings me back to this morning's theme. More than ever before, we need collective action to solve the challenge of women's financial inclusion, and all of us in this room need to press to make that change happen. That's why, with the support of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and in partnership with UNCDF, we've created the Women's Digital Financial Inclusion Hub. Of course, we're all in the development business, so there has to be an acronym. The WDFI Advocacy Hub is a catalyst for collective action to increase women's digital financial inclusion. It's designed to connect local, regional, and global partners through coordinated campaigns to build greater awareness and have greater impact. But what I find most exciting as a part of this effort is that we're building local coalitions in markets like Indonesia and Ethiopia, helping local organizations through capacity building and grant making to advocate to their governments and their private sector players persuasively and with confidence. I'm absolutely thrilled that today some of our coalition partners from Indonesia and Ethiopia will be taking center stage with us. And I just might say a word for all of you to just take a quick look at the floral arrangements and the vases on your table. They are all flowers from Indonesia, Ethiopia, and other markets that we hope to bring the coalition to. And the vases were designed by local women entrepreneurs. So I think they're particularly beautiful, so do take a look. And I'm really excited that the coalition is growing. In recent weeks, we've welcomed the Cherie Blair Foundation, the Grasa Michel Trust, Microloan, and Time Global as new members of the coalition. So in closing, I have a really simple call to action. Join us. We want to grow more. We want to expand the reach of the coalition, but we really want a diversity of organizations who can bring different perspectives, different skill sets. We want mobile network operators, payment providers, fintechs, traditional banks, foundations, civil society organizations, research organizations, everything you can imagine to become members of this coalition with us, because it's going to take all of us working together to create the change we want to see. I'm excited to hear from some of our coalition partners today, as their voices really are the most important to driving this change, but I'm also really eager and really delighted to hear from our most valued hub partner, our co-lead and your breakfast co-host this morning, UNCDF. So I'm happy to bring to the podium and introduce my great friend, Henri Domel, Director of Inclusive Finance at UNCDF, where he's responsible for leading the practices strategy in digital finance and the promotion of inclusive digital economies in over 25 countries across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. A friend to Women's World Banking and to me, Henri, please join us.
Thank you so much, Mary Ellen, for this kind introduction. And I'm really excited to be here and to see so many friends, colleagues, partners from all walks of life. I think, this event is really a testimony of the commitment we all have made to address the barrier that prevent women from being included in our economies and in our societies. As you pointed out, Mary Ellen, investing in gender equality and women's economic empowerment is a precondition for sustainable development in an increasingly urgent area for action. It is clear that women often hold the key to sustainable development and sustainable business model because, they have proven to be excellent entrepreneurs, profitable agents, and supporting the growth of the family and their local communities. And for UNCDF, promoting women's economic empowerment in the least developed countries stands for creating equal economies where every woman has equal access, agency, and leadership. It is our vision to ensure that women and girls are not only beneficiaries of programs, but rather agents for change. The vision of the Women Digital Financial Inclusion Advocacy Hub, now I can use the acronym, WDFI, emerged from the realization that in order to sustain the momentum around gender equality, And to keep it going in the right direction, we needed to be more strategic, more intentional about coordinated action to bring the voice of women into the fore at the global as well as local level. And our inclusive digital economy practice, has thrived precisely because we work closely with partners that have a strong local presence and resilient implementation networks that can lead to sustainable change. Our, concrete approach to support gender intentional policy change is grounded in three main elements, three Ps. The first is policies. So we intend and we support the development and evaluation of gender-intentional DFS policies and regulatory solutions. The second is participation. We create platforms that enable space for diverse stakeholders, especially underserved women, to participate in the policy-making process. And I think this participation has been, a very interesting experience for us. We will hear more about it later, but it has really bring about a new voice in shaping policy. And finally, power. We champion female leaders to be represented and support all policymakers to introduce a gender lens in their DFS policies. So the WDFI Advocacy Hub embodies this approach, especially the participation component, as it centers on supporting women to lead advocacy for their needs and to co-create multi-stakeholder advocacy strategy to ensure that gender consideration shape policy and market solutions. The successful launch of the coalition in Ethiopia in June marked the beginning of a process for impactful change grounded on gathering evidence first, then strengthening local capacity, and finally channeling financial and technical resources to create solutions and tools for local advocates. And this local coalition and their bridge to the global hub are reshaping how we work together and how to be more intentional in the way we address the barriers that women face to be part of the digital economy. Let me conclude by, echoing, your call to action, Mary-Ellen, and, the WDFI Advocacy Hub as an innovative model to accelerate the pace of change, and also to remind us that to succeed in that great endeavor, we need to work together. So again, thank you so much, and really excited to be here.
So yesterday I had the great pleasure of sitting down with Mats Granryd, who's the Director General of the GSMA. GSMA was a very valued, very early joiner of the coalition, and we talked about why they'd made such an early commitment, why the Advocacy Hub was so important to them. Because the GSMA, as you can imagine, is actively focused on accelerating one of our first calls to action, making access to technology available to all women, and particularly to women entrepreneurs. They're also going to be conducting some important research to deepen our data collection about the needs, particularly digital financial needs, of micro-entrepreneurs. Mats really wanted to be here with us this morning, but the GSMA team had already booked him to another commitment at this time, as we're all totally overbooked this week. But he wanted to share some of the exciting initiatives and progress that they're undertaking to drive digital financial inclusion. So if I could invite the panelists to make their way up to the stage, we'll share Matt's remarks with you. Thanks. Part of the reason I love the issue of financial inclusion is it really is a problem that we can solve. Right. We know that access to the internet, access to technology can be a real accelerator for them. But as we know from your really fantastic recent report on the gender gap, progress has really stalled on getting digital technology into women's hands. Women are 16% less likely than men to use the mobile internet. And this is so key to really turbocharging this issue forward. Tell me what you think some of the things that can be done are.
It has stalled, as you rightly said. We've had a great progress over many years, but after the pandemic it has gone the wrong direction with the mobile internet usage. So policymakers and governments don't really know how to handle this, what to actually change in order to move things forward. We from GSMA, we have just launched this, or will just launch this report, that I will be happy to give you on policy considerations. And it's a simple guide, but it's actually quite useful to understand the barriers of mobile internet usage, as you rightly said. And I think you pointed out the entrepreneurship. That is one of the key things to create financial inclusion. So here it is.
Thank you very much.
It's a sneak peek because it's not launched yet,
okay.
but nevertheless. So I think gender disaggregated data is something we need to work with, but also tangible, easy help for governments and policymakers.
Couldn't agree with you more. And you know, as frankly, as bad as the data collection is and the lack of gender disaggregated data on women as individuals, it's even worse, frankly, as women as businesses. And what are the real barriers that businesses are facing?
Many of them could be affordability issues. We know affordability is one of the big barriers for the lack of mobile internet usage, not having able to have a smartphone. Another thing is skills. I don't know how to use it. It's this black thing, I don't know how to handle it. The third thing is that maybe I have my money and maybe I can sort of muster up the energy to understand how to use it, but I've heard that's all bad things on it. It's safety and security is the third thing that's really big. But I think that you are on something which is bigger than all of the above, which is the lack of relevant content. It's the lack of having an application that really changes my life, that can be so beneficial for me, so I can find the money. I'm okay with learning this new device. I'm okay with handling the fear of internet. So having women entrepreneurship, having entrepreneurship at the edge is critical here. Today we have 55 million women that we have touched through this commitment, and just in the last year we have added another 10 million.
Congratulations.
So well, it's the industry that is really taking this serious, and financial inclusion, using the internet, but using it for financial inclusion, using it as a bank account, you can say, is so critical. It's so critical, and I think that's where the partnership, and that's why we feel so strongly about this, is that we're actually complementing each other. We come with one part of the technology, you come with another part of it, and together we can actually make financial inclusion happen.
So without further ado, we're going to get to the really good stuff. I'll turn you over to Deon Woods Bell, our WDFI Advocacy Hub Program Officer from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I might point out that the foundation is also a co-host of this morning's breakfast. And Deon will moderate today's panel and introduce you to the panelists. Thanks so much, Deon.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. Wow, it's an honor and a privilege to be here with you all today. And if I could just say, there's some moments in your life where you feel like the universe does you the great honor, the great privilege, the great service of bringing together a constellation of people, actions, and moments that really serve us all well. So this is one of those moments. I see so many new friends, some old friends, and some people who I've yet to know, but some people I've heard about and they don't even know that I speak their name all the time. I'm in that kind of moment where I feel like I'm among my people, and I know that when women get together and where we put our minds and our hearts together, our collective energy and passions, there's no stopping us. And I know that there are male allies that make that possible. They join the journey with us, and that we together can go so far. So I am here on fire with so much energy and so much commitment to this cause. And I stand on the shoulder of my sisters. I'm looking at my predecessors in this role, and I'm thinking, wow, I wouldn't be here but for you. And I'm looking at the sisters who are on this journey and moving forward with so much momentum. So let me tell you, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and I in this role, couldn't be prouder to be your ally and to be here with you to uplift women and to work towards women's financial inclusion. And I'm joined by luminaries. You can't talk about issues at a high level without being on the ground and trying to make sure that you have local impact and that you know what the high-level principles are all about. I mean, why gather principles without having the real data, the real people behind them? Because we're not just talking about data, we're talking about a movement. And as my good friend, I'm looking right now in Shuti, and she would say, we're trying to make sure that all Africans can eat, and we're working on behalf of them. And every single time she says that, I get this passion. And every single time we have our colleagues here talking about those issues, we have that passion. So I've gone off script a little bit from the talking points about the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and why we do it, but that's why we're here. We're here to uplift, to see women move further. Let me tell you a little bit about our panelists. And they'll forgive me if I mispronounce the names, but they know that I am so in awe of all the work that they do. I'll start over with Revita. Revita Alfi is the chair of HWDI, the Association of Women with Disabilities in Indonesia. We've started off this morning with happy tears. I shared with her that my sister is also deaf. When I tell you I can't believe this moment, I'm serious. She has an intervention program in every district and the village levels supporting women with disabilities. Her programs include capacity building activities for economic empowerment for people with disabilities in an inclusive and entrepreneurship focused way for people with disabilities, facilitating network and also trainings. The goal is to develop entrepreneurs and create job opportunities for more than 1,000 women who can plan and manage their businesses independently. I know she's making it happen. Welcome, Revita. Thank you. Next over to Helen. Helen is the CEO of the Cherie Blair Foundation. She became the CEO in 2017 following a career dedicated to championing social justice, gender equality, and human rights. She joined the foundation after over a decade of leading international charity for women and girls, ActionAid, where she was the director of fundraising and communications for ActionAid International. And she recently became the director of fundraising for ActionAid UK. Welcome, Helen. It brings me special pleasure to welcome Zouera, and to see this one I said you gotta remember, Zouera, who is the CEO of Aliko Dangote Foundation, the largest private foundation in Africa based in Lagos. In this role, she leads the foundation's efforts to improve health, nutrition, education, and economic empowerment outcomes, primarily in Nigeria and all over Africa. In addition, she sits on several boards, a private sector health alliance in Nigeria, One Globe. I can read on and on. She has so many boards. You can find it in the program. You know, she's done a lot. She's done a lot. She's doing a lot. And importantly, she focuses on the Secretariat for COVID, the Nigerian Private Sector Coalition Against COVID-19. Welcome to the panel. You'll recall that I mentioned that there are some people who, even before you meet them, you feel like you know them. Dr. Monique, you are one of those people. Her Excellency, Dr. Monique Sanzabagangwa, she is the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union. She recently launched a Women and Youth Financial Economic Inclusion Initiative, seeking to unlock over 100 billion, don't dream small, right, doctor? Right, 100 billion US to enable financing opportunities and parity in employment of at least 10 million African women and youth by 2030. Dr. Monique, I know you have to leave to other commitments. Will you please grace us with at least a couple of minutes of your thoughts on this new initiative?
Good morning, everyone. I'm looking for a corner where I can be seen and not obstruct any view. How a pleasure for me to be here. Mary Ellen, a friend and a partner in this business of including women in finance, especially digital financial services. Congratulations on the book, which the title is just a statement. And even before you opening it, you know that is it. And I agree completely with that. So the African Union Commission, of which I'm the vice chairperson, is the implementing arm of the African Union. Actually, the executive secretariat for it. And we work with our member states, with our partners, with the citizens to actually achieve our vision of an Africa that is prosperous, that is integrated, that is peaceful, that is driven by its own people, especially women and youth. And we are integrating. We have now a free trade area of 1.3 billion people. We are, of course, affected by global challenges, but we know that we have a big part of the global solutions when it comes to our lands, to our green forests, waters, to our mining, to our climate that is allowing us to produce food and really feed the world, and to our youth that is a powerhouse, and our women that are very working hard to drive the economy. So the future is bright. But we still have challenges, and one of them is really full inclusion of women and youth in the economy, in the finance, in the digital finance for that matter. We have a decade dedicated for women, financial and economic inclusion, running from 2020 to 2030. We say that women and youth always have to go together because the challenges they face are almost the same when it comes to accessing finance. And we came up with the initiative, which is a collaborative effort of the African Union and our partners. I can see some of them here, and I can see Lucy, who is also one of those very active champions of this. Maybe she can unpack it more after you have left. But we are saying the African Union has a convening power of all the 55 member states of our continent. If you want to push policy, if you want to push regulation reforms, if you want to push implementation, and if you want to actually see whether really there is transformation happening on the ground, if you want to collaborate across borders, because we have also the regional economic communities, our building blocks, then this is the area where we can all come together and put our efforts together. So the Wi-Fi 2030 initiative is about actually unlocking that potential that women and youth hold for our continent. We are saying, can we work with our partners who are already doing great on the ground, but most of the time their initiatives are not well appreciated. Maybe they are struggling with some of those hurdles in policy and regulatory framework. Maybe they don't know that actually they have like-minded partners across whom they can synergize and amplify their work. So we are saying, can we create this platform for partnerships to all come together? Governments, private sector, foundations, players in this space of financial inclusion, our financial institutions, regional, continental, and otherwise. We have so many partners in the UN system and otherwise. Can we come together with one purpose of making sure that we unlock those 100 billions for our women on the continent and the youth. And can we come together to drive parity? Because the union has a target of parity, achieving parity by 2025 in our organizations, diversity, the General Action Plan number 10. It's also applying in our institutions. Can we push for inclusion of youth? We have a target of 35%. Can we push for inclusion of women and youth in the digital financial world? And really the conversation of today is speaking to that. So that is the initiative and what we want to do. And how we do it, we are saying we need this framework to make sure that partners come together, governments, all the players, and we also create this framework to account for what we are achieving on the field. And we want to make sure that those women, they just don't hear about us. They just don't hear about announcement of these 100 billion, but they need to touch and see. They need to come and tell the story that actually we are part of those 10 million. Actually, we have been, we have accessed finance of this much. So that's framework to really coalesce for our action and also account for women and youth on the continent, and also push for policy implementation on the ground. That is what the initiative is all about. And I can invite you to subscribe to one of the 3 working groups that we have on the continent. One on pushing quotas. We are pushing for quota in procurement, quotas in representation in leadership roles, parity, 35% for men, for youth. We are pushing for really those percentages to increase. But also we are pushing for financial inclusion, which is another working group, including also the digital financial services and digital financial inclusion. Another working group is about business development and entrepreneurship. So whichever you wish to be part of, so that you can bring your energy and your experience together with your like-minded partners, so that we can really push this agenda. That's what it's all about. We have a champion, the president of Ghana, who is our champion for gender, and he's made a call to action last July in Accra, and he's going to make again this call to the African Union General Assembly, if I can call it that way, of heads of state and government in February, just a few days after the Dubai. So from Dubai, come to Addis. And we are going to organize a side event for really this Wi-Fi and the call to action, grand call to action, because there was one in Accra. This one is going to be grand, where the heads of state are there and all the leaders are there, so that we really can put our efforts together and raise those millions. Yesterday, there was one unveiling of this Energize Africa. Afrexim Bank made a commitment of $700 million. Equity Bank, $6 billion. So we are actually getting there to the 100 billion. And when I look at those 10 million in emerging markets, then I know Africa has a big share. So with you, UNCDF, with you, Women's World Banking, with you, Dangote Foundation, with you, Bill and Melinda Gates, and so many others, we can really make this dream come true for the African women and youth. So thank you so much.
Sign us up. We're there. We're going first to Dubai, and then we'll be over to Addis to join you in this coalition and to build the bridges. Well, it's hard to follow such a luminary, but what she's done is she's teed us up for success, and that's what a good sister does, so thank you very much. let us talk about the an opportunity for all of you to lean in here and talk about women's financial inclusion generally from your perspective. We have the new Findex data. Thank you very much. Leora Clapper will join a little bit later. I don't think she's in the room right now. But we have the recent Findex survey, the data from the World Bank that found that we're closing the gender gap around the world, but 742 million, like Mary Ellen said, women are still outside of the formal financial system. Why, from your perspective, is this a big challenge? And just paint the picture for us. Like, why are you in this moment with this? We'll start with you, Zouera.
Thank you very much, Deon, and thank you all for being here today. The reasons are the same reasons that women are not an even or equitable part of life, right? So the financial inclusion piece is just a reflection of the general state of imbalance that we live in. So, but the impact of it is severe, right? So when we don't have, when half of the people in a country are not contributing to an economy, then we have half of the economic value that is not accessed, activated, that's just not there. Not giving women the same access to finance, access to markets, access to anything is just shutting out half of the world, and it literally doesn't make sense, especially when we live in a context of difficulty. So if I look at, my continent in particular, the impact of not having women's businesses grow at the same clip as men's literally means that the economy's GDP is lost, and we've tried to quantify how much GDP value is lost by not having if all we did was take registered SMEs in our countries, just the registered ones, the ones that are even formal. Let's even leave the informal sector on the side because we don't know how to manage the informal sector. Let's just pick the SMEs that are there, that exist, give them the same opportunity to grow their businesses, then GDP contribution from those businesses would be it's immeasurable. And so there's a lot we're leaving on the table by leaving women out of the mix. But the why, Deon, is the same reason as why. Why don't we have as many women in political office? Why don't we have as many women in decision-making bodies? Why don't we have women running countries? I mean, we celebrate victories to say we have one woman president. First elected woman president in Africa was Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. That was how long ago? We were all grown, right? We're happy that we have a deputy chairperson of the AU, who's a woman, but why couldn't the chairperson of the AU be a woman? So the point is the inequity is not just because we're just talking about financial inclusion today, but it's across the board. And I think that's what we really need to look at, because when the general idea that women can participate and contribute as much as men, when that is socialized, then the issue of excluding women from financial services wouldn't be there. Let me just say that for now.
Powerful. So many barriers. Helen, why don't you bring in your voice, please?
Thanks, Deon. And it's lovely to see you all, and I'm so excited about this initiative, but we'll get to that in a second. Why? I mean, the report itself, the Findex itself, says that it's the issues that we see that cause the most marginalisation, literacy levels, rural locations, exacerbated by disability. These things, low income, you can't afford a device, you can't afford data. These things exclude people, exclude women from financial inclusion. We know that. But the GSMA that we heard from earlier, even when they control for all those factors, women's rates of financial inclusion are still lower which really speaks to Zouera's point, which is even though those inequalities exist for people in general, for women, they're worse. And why is that? And I think, you know, we've heard already the point that it is that discrimination, that fundamental discrimination and social norms, which mean even if you control for those points, that women are still excluded. That's a pretty nutty, messy problem, but that actually, I feel optimistic because I think with technology, actually, we have the potential, but what's lacking is this collective action. And hearing from the Deputy Chairman today, this initiative, we're so excited about it because we need action globally in rooms like this with people like you, but we need action locally as well. And we see that with the work that we do. We see that women don't just need access to the device. They do need access to the device. They need access to the data, but they also need support to help them use those services. They need the support that comes through training. They need that provided contextually, locally, with organisations working on the ground who understand the context that they're in. A global one-size-fits-all solution will not meet the needs of this 750 million women who are excluded at the moment. We need to be working at the African Union level, and we need to be working at the community level with people and adapting our solutions to those different environments. I think I should leave it there too. Thanks, Deon.
Thank you. Revita.
Thank you. First, I introduce my colleague, Ms. Maulani. Okay. I'm so excited, and I prepared this in writing. So I read it. Okay. Thank you. First, women workers in Indonesia face many barriers in accessing financial service. First, discrimination in access to work still occurs due to the stigma that women are not the breadwinners. The labor market has a patriarchal practice that position women as vulnerable to be victim of the economic structure, forcing many Indonesian women into the informal economy where few financial services reach. Second, women who work informally often lack access to resources necessary for financial literacy or comfort with technology, resulting in low utilization of banking service on digital platform. And banking applications in Indonesia are inaccessible for many, including women with less education, those living in village or rural areas, and women with disability. And based on most recent data from Ministry of National Development and Planning, Republic Indonesia, Bappenas, the poverty rate of women with disability is 8% higher than men with disability. As the Indonesian economy continues to grow, so does economic inequality, with people living at or below the poverty line at increased risk of being left behind. This reality is exacerbated by COVID-19 pandemic, which continue to have negative impact on economy, such as a declining production capacity, consumption, and investment level. Of course, these trends are not only presenting in Indonesia, but also amongst other countries, including many donor government. And the other hand, we can see the strength of persons with disability in the land economy and the potential benefit of increasing inclusion. Indonesia is home over 23 million people with disability, of which at least 11 million are women, and 72% work in informal sector. And 74% do not have banking account. In addition, the ownership of mobile phone in the disability group is also relatively low, reaching only 74%. and making entrepreneurship and digital financial service more gender and disability inclusive, offer a way out of poverty for many living at the margin, helping them to increase their income, created new economic opportunities, not just for themselves, but for others in their communities, and contribute to the broader Indonesia economy. Thank you.
Thank you. You all brought out so many important points. And I'll highlight something that Revita taught us all when we were having our conversations leading up to this. Revita taught us that you can't have access without accessibility. You know, hang on to that, you know, tell everybody else about it. And we know that when we bring more people into the conversation and into the economy, we grow the pie for all of us. So thank you, Revita, for teaching us that, and thank you everybody else for helping us understand why you're in this in the first place. Now we want to shift a little bit to talk about why women entrepreneurs. It's her economy too. We're making that a hashtag, by the way. There's a recent Harvard study that talked about more than a quarter of all adult women in Africa being involved in entrepreneurial activity. Makes sense. So why are women, micro and small businesses underserved by finance and technology providers? You started to get this a little bit, but maybe you can go deeper.
All right. Thank you, Deon. So I'll start with years ago, almost 20 years ago, I joined IFC, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank. And if I remember correctly, Mary Ellen was one of the people who interviewed me. And the program at the time was, how does IFC also have a gender program? Because the bank had one, but the bank was talking about gender budgeting and gender equality, and that didn't really resonate with IFC. IFC is a project finance institution, so how do we make sure that women are also, you know, included in the work that IFC does? And so we came up with this program. At the time it was called GEM, and the idea was really to look at banks that were clients of IFC, and how can we get them to lend money to women entrepreneurs? Why don't we work with them and understand what the problem is? And so we did. And I mean, at the time when I said, well, let's just go to Nigeria because my mom is from there and I feel comfortable there and I promise you there's a lot of women entrepreneurs there. I said, yeah, okay, just go. But nobody thought it was really gonna work. So we come to Nigeria and we meet all kinds of banks behind our country manager's back because he wasn't really happy with this idea of, you know, this is a long story, but I'll shorten it. So IFC has the investment arm and then the advisory services arm. The gender program was on the advisory side. So the investment people were the, you know, the big dogs that get the deals done, and then the advisory people are the ones who sweeten the deal with, you know, let's sprinkle in some environmental and social, let's sprinkle in a bit of gender, and make the deal come together. And so a lot of the advisory services groups like mine were difficult for the country managers to deal with because they had all these different people coming in. Oh, we want to talk to them about corporate governance. We want to talk to them about environment. We want to talk to them about gender. And they have this one bank that they're trying to do a deal with. Long story, we spoke to a couple of banks. Access Bank was the one that we did focus groups, and all the women in every single focus group told us to speak to Access Bank because they had a young management team. These guys are young. They have wives who work too. They will get it. Go to Access Bank. Long story, we do a deal with Access Bank, a $30 million deal, the first one that IFC ever did, which was really focused on lending money to women entrepreneurs. So this was all in the very formal sense. So these are registered companies, women who had businesses, you know, that pay taxes, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of the reasons why women were not accessing finance is because the way the banks require guarantees, it's not like here where people have credit scores, right? So if you have a credit score, then your credit score is based on you and your own history and how you've behaved as a person or as a company. But if we don't have a registry, then it has to be collateral. So bring us collateral, bring us a title of a house, bring us the title of a immovable asset. Very difficult for women to get in these contexts. Homes, that a husband and wife share. The title usually, the house is titled usually in the husband's house. And in a lot of countries, we found that you couldn't even title a house in two people's names. The house would only be titled in the husband's name. So if you want to pledge the house as collateral, your husband has to agree. That's a huge obstacle, because how many husbands would even agree? Things like, so those were the things. The other thing was the banks really didn't believe that women had businesses that weren't about hair or makeup or clothing. They just completely underestimated the women entrepreneurs. So I'm really excited, like when Mary Ellen was talking earlier about Diamond Bank, so our little Access Bank ended up growing up and buying Diamond Bank, and they're the biggest bank in Nigeria, and they still have a women's program, and they do all kinds of things. They just got it from the very beginning. And so there's some education that needs to be done around how do you even talk to women, right? We don't assess risk the same way, we don't behave the same way, we don't have the same resources because of the way our social structure is. So these are all real obstacles, but that are solvable. And there's all kinds of solvable ways. There's different ways the banks can look at collateral. There's ways that they can take equity in the business. There's just all kinds of things that banks can do and have been doing. But this is at the bigger level. At the smaller level, at the micro level, what we found, and we have a program in my foundation now where we give grants to women, to poor women. We just give them a grant and a phone. The grant is just for them to expand a business activity. So we don't train, like there's no training that goes with it, because we're talking about companies that have like a capital base of like $50 or $100. So we're not gonna spend money training them on, business management skills. Like, they're basically income generating activities. So people frying around the side of the road, people having like little small businesses that allow them to live. But how about we just give them a little push, a little boost? And everybody thought that we were crazy for just giving poor people money. You can't just give them money, where's the M&E? You have to train them, you have to upskill them. And I'm like, no, just because people haven't been to school and just because they're not speaking like we're speaking doesn't mean that they're dumb or they don't know what they want or they don't know what to do. If you speak to the non-literate people and you ask them what they need, they know exactly what they would do if you gave them an extra $20. We're the ones who don't know how to make a $20 bill become a $100 thing. They know how to do that because they invest in small pieces. They know exactly what to do. So we give them that respect. We really started with this microgrant program. And the M&E that we're doing now, the reports are showing us that 85% of the women did something productive with the money. Now, the ones where we added the phone, so the phone was, that's our little financial digital inclusion piece. The phone helped them just do more and better. Many of them, which I hadn't even anticipated as a side effect, became like distributors of airtime. Because in a lot of our countries in Africa, it's not, you don't have like a data plan. You buy the units, you buy the amount for your phone as you go, right? So you can buy units for 50 cents and like load up your phone. So women became distributors of airtime and turned their businesses around. Anyway, there's a lot of really good stories coming from there. But I think our approach just has to be about education to the banks, the financial institutions who are really about making money. And my time is completely up because now the thing is red, I see you, so I will
Well, I love how you started early in your career focusing on women and building these strategies and how you're using that until this day and how your vision that you started early then connects with some other strategies and initiatives going on and also ties into the hub. Because we're talking about access and control, not just access, but also control. We're talking about putting technology in the hands of women, and we're talking about growing the financial welfare of the entire family. Yes. So thank you very much for that. Helen, the use of technology is key in the work that you do at your foundation. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you've been able to use technology to scale and reach women entrepreneurs?
Sure, thanks, Deon. The foundation is relatively young, about 14 years old, and we've been focused on women entrepreneurs for that whole 14 years. And what we've found works is the combination of using technology and working with partners in the places where we're working. We found that combination, local partners with technology. The local partners allow us to reach women, well, all over the world. There's fantastic local partners everywhere. Nigeria is an incredible place to work, but in many countries, Indonesia and more. But the technology does help with a range of different things. So our service is designed with those two things in mind. What we try and do is increase financial literacy. We try and bring business skills. We try and support women to understand what kind of finance they need for their business, so access to finance, and support the creation of networks within the program. So not just networks that are happening outside, but create them as we're delivering the programs. We have a range of different programs, very briefly. One is a business skills micro-learning app that we deliver in Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Guyana, Vietnam and Indonesia. And the content is always tailored to the environment. So if you want to set up a business in that country and register a business, it'll give you information relevant to you. And it asks questions at the beginning, so the journey can be tailored. So what we find is that by using technology, we can ask questions in the technology that will tailor the learning experience to women, but at the same time, we can deliver that support services to many more women than we could face-to-face. Now, we also know that many women want face-to-face and need it, and the more excluded you are from a city, from formal financial institutions, the more important that face-to-face is. But it is also expensive, and that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. We need to get together in ways like this to find the money to reach that sort of last mile, as so-called, but those people who are missing out. But there's many people who are living in urban environments who do have access to a device, who do have a level of literacy, and they can benefit from those skills being available to them, and technology reaches more of them, faster, and our impact shows that. Looking ahead, we know that this micro-learning app, we have a mentoring women in business program, we have some blended learning programs. We know that they work. We've been monitoring them for their impact, both on decision-making, self-esteem, confidence, as well as the harder business outcomes, growth of the business, employees, resilience of the business. We know they work, but us sitting, handing these over, we need to get them into the hands of millions more women. So we really want to find ways to work in partnership with many organisations like yourselves to reach many more women. And I'm also on RED, so thank you very much.
We're all red.
So much to talk about, so little time. But look, as I mentioned before, we're talking about the core tenets of the hub, and what are those? We're talking about women getting more skills. We're talking about access to technology. We're talking about access, usage, and control of financial services. Revita, you started to tell us about women with disabilities and their challenges, those challenges and risks that they face. Universal design is one way that everybody, not just people with disabilities, but everybody can be brought into the economy and into digital financial services. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about this. And I'm going to look over at my UNCDF colleagues and with the policy hat on, because Revita's also going to give us, if you can, so we don't run out of time, a nod to what policy interventions do you think are there. Then we're going to challenge our UNCDF colleagues to actually work on those policies and get the job done. So, all right. I know you're on the beat. I'm just saying. Okay, all right. Revita, please.
Thank you. as women with disability, we experience double discrimination and encounter more obstacles in our pursuit of economic opportunity. To address this and ensure equal access for women with disabilities, first, the local government and other entities, in particularly bank and private sector actors, should revise policy and regulation to promote inclusion and ensure all women have equal access to business education and training. And government and others, especially private sector financial institution and digital platform, should develop their awareness on the inclusion of all by increasing the sensitivity and awareness of disability throughout all interaction, policies, and public service. In answering about the technology gap, government and banks and others should create policies to answer the absence of reasonable accommodation in digital financial literacy mechanism and bank service. This environment must be accessible for all users, regardless of sensory, physically, psychosocial, intellectual, or other disability. And women entrepreneurs with disability should be provided with appropriate technology to run their business, such as a smartphone, so that they can leverage adaptive technology to access digital financial service. And about answering the access and usage, person with disability should be meaningfully consulted in the design and implementation of any policy, regulation, platform, or product to ensure accessibility and relevance. Price must be affordable and distribution equitable to support women entrepreneurs in all our diversity. And data must be disaggregated and made available to better understand the realities facing women entrepreneurs with disability, such as a difficult in obtaining credit or using inaccessible banking platform. Thank you.
Thank you. Revita, you are so bold and so brave. I wouldn't know how to go to Indonesia and to be part of such an important conversation. I am so in awe of you. Thank you, and thank you to our audience for listening so intently, for just hanging on her every word, because what she's speaking is really powerful. So, Revita, thank you. I know we started off this conversation talking about the importance of voice and inclusion, but let's all live it. Let's not just say it. And this is one of those moments, so I just want to call it out. Thank you. Helen, you have about a lightning round because we're going to get kicked off the stage to talk about the skills and technologies. Sorry if I messed you up. But no, just to talk about the skills training very quickly, and we can come back to it more. But I wanted you to mention the skills training and technology focus that you have. Yeah.
Sorry, the app. Yeah, I mean, there's great things about training with technology. Scale, we talked about before, low cost to reach a woman. There is the potential to offer accessibility that you might not otherwise be able to, and there's the flexibility that the woman can use the training on an app when it's convenient for her, as you can with online training. It can be contextualized, you can adjust the content, you can add new services. So when COVID happened, we brought e-commerce in, we brought digital marketing in, more recently we brought mobile money support in, and you can bring that into those services and contextualize it to the different places you offer. You can actually make it engaging. We all spend a lot of time on our devices, and you can use games and other ways to make it fun and interesting, and also make it quite simple to get across a complex topic. So we find that works well. And obviously you can capture data in the process of doing the training, which is really helpful. However, and not all women have the time to attend face-to-face training. So obviously that means that, you know, it gives that flexibility. But it does exclude people. the people that we heard about at the beginning. It does exclude them, and it we know that women prefer face-to-face. So it has pros and cons, but we feel that for many people it does provide them with access they wouldn't otherwise get.
Thank you. That was really good. Now we want to talk a little bit about platforms and lack of access. So you started to paint the picture a little bit, Helen, but we want to go into conversation about public-private partnerships and private sector collaborations. How can we get access to some of the deep pockets and big money that we know is out there to support this agenda? Let's just, let's just go there. Zouera, let's just go there. Can you talk to us a little bit about women in Africa? And we know the use of mobile money has really can, and has accelerated financial inclusion, but can you talk to us about the private sector perspective?
So the private sector is really more and more, there are more and more opportunities for private sector to engage with a lot of the policy issues. Just recently, we had a team from a group called Sight Savers come to Nigeria, and they spoke to everybody, specifically in the private sector, about how we include people with disabilities in the workplace and how we include them in the value chain and the supply chain of the companies and things like that. And you would think that it's really a basic thing to do. Like, why would anybody be discriminating against, somebody who, was physically disabled but we have so much work to do because we haven't thought about it. Most buildings aren't accessible to people in wheelchairs. We don't have lights at crossings that are either that make sound or that have braille buttons that you could press. So if you have a disability, you can't necessarily cross the street without somebody helping you. Just things like that just haven't been part of the regular private sector discourse, specifically around disabilities. And so they encouraged all of us to join this compact to make us, and they made it sound really nice. It was something like getting over our fear, or just being less worried about being politically incorrect, and how to deal with people with, I thought it was really powerful because nobody wants to do the wrong thing, but you don't know, can we say deaf, or do we have to say hard of hearing? Can we say handicapped, or do we have to say physically disabled? Like, to that level of granularity. And so I think a lot of openness is coming in that particular area. But really, in terms of excluding people, banks definitely, companies are realizing that excluding anybody from their books as a client is not good for business. And so there's more and more effort that we can visibly see about banks in particular, because we're talking about financial inclusion today, talking about supporting women. And I know that Helen must see this in Nigeria when it comes to the mobile operators, the banks. Almost every bank in Nigeria has a women's program now. The money, Airtel Money and MTN and all those companies also are making a lot of efforts, or they're just realizing that this is a market for them as opposed to some side charity business that they should be doing, because that doesn't work. So unless you're going to do it, if you're only going to do it as CSR or as some side pet project, it doesn't ever get traction. It has to be part of the normality of how people run their businesses.
Do you want to go next? Why don't we go over to Revita? Yeah.
About this, I would say to increase to effectiveness and sustainability of efforts promoting entrepreneurship with digital financial inclusion. Funders and practitioners need to support women in our diversities to engage in advocacy, implementation, and monitoring local level. And together, We can improve outcome for all by ensuring the equality and inclusivity of policy and practice for women independent entrepreneurs. I think this. I think it's enough. Thank you.
Thank you. We want to pivot to audience questions, and before we do, I don't know if you want to get any last points before we go to the audience. Are you all good? Okay. Dear audience, we have if you have any questions for our panelists, please let us know. One issue that we've mentioned several times, but we haven't had a chance to go deep on, is looking at data and access to data surrounding women's digital financial inclusion or financial inclusion overall. Can you please raise your hands, or I can do voluntold, a couple of you who I know work on these issues. Please let us know if you want to. You're welcome to take the floor.
Thank you. Very engaging panel discussions. Thank you for that. My name is Anir Chaudhary. I run a program called A2I in Bangladesh, which is the digital transformation for the entire country, starting with the government. And financial inclusion, especially women's financial inclusion, is a very important component of that. Now, I've heard a lot of you talk about digital literacy skills. One thing I'd like to point out, and this is something that came up in many of our discussions, particularly one that we held before COVID with Gates Foundation and UNCDF as well, and BTCA, Better Than Cash Alliance, that women's needs are different, so the products have to be different as well. So women like to potentially borrow or save as a group. That's why microfinance with women actually works really well. But microfinance really in Bangladesh has not gone digital. And it's still very expensive because you have to go door to door. So, and then another thing that came up in that discussion was control of the money, even though women may have control of the device, potentially, but as soon as it is cashed, then the control of the money goes to the men. So designing products, just like when we talk about designing products from urban to rural, you cannot just make a downgrading of that product. Or I think I was just looking at your book, you're talking about some of these things also, that you can't really womanize a men's product, really. It doesn't work. So fundamentally looking at women's needs, preferences, choices, and allowing companies, maybe some kind of sandboxing or guidance, to do the right product development, not as CSR, but as business models. How can we think about it? Not you, as all of us think about this, and how can maybe Women's World Banking guide us towards that? That's the question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So my colleague Snigdha, who works closely with you, would be very happy that you've raised these issues. So important that not every strategy that you launch is a one-size-fits-all. We know we have to customize and tailor and focus on local as well. Wendy, I'm sorry, I don't know which way to go. Would you like to bring in your initiative focused on data?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Wendy Telekey. I'm with the Women Entrepreneurs Finance Initiative at the World Bank, but we work with all of the multilateral development banks. And I had a couple of observations, just things that I'm reflecting on, that when Zouera was talking about some of the early days in IFC and remembering some of those very, very well. And you know, when you see the evolution of a country like Nigeria, where it was very slow going in the beginning, and you eventually get one bank to go, and then you get multiple banks, and now you look at the ecosystem there, many banks are led by women. There's a deputy central bank governor. I mean, we have a lot of women in leadership, and I think that's really one of the things that tips the balance for these issues. So it's been very gratifying to see that over the years in a few markets. Bangladesh, we see a lot of movement also, and it's been great to see that. So I wanted to, though, pick up on the question of sex disaggregated data. I think that's a critical issue. It's something that we at WeFi are looking very closely at, and it gets back to the question of scale. What do we need to do to really make this a fundamental shift globally, so that financial institutions are doing what we're seeing in Nigeria and some other places, but not many, to really focus on this and really understand the business dynamics and the business case. And we need to have more emphasis on getting the data from the supply side. So I don't know if Leora has joined, if you said she was going to be here, but we're doing better on the demand side. We're doing pretty well. I think we're doing a lot better on supply side when we're talking about accounts and transactions and being able to disaggregate that. But on the supply side with this business and with lending, it's very, very little. We have to do a lot more. And we're really excited to be working with many of you as we move forward. We're doing more with our partners, which are all of the regional multilateral development banks and the World Bank and IFC. And hope in the spring also to be launching something we're calling the We Finance Code, really looking at the supply side data and trying to make a transformational shift in the way regulators and banks think about understanding this market, designing products, setting baselines, and setting targets for how much more they can do in this space.
Thank you, Wendy. We have two more questions. I'll go first to Raja, and then I'll come back to my friend over here.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for this fascinating discussion. Just want to pick up on the point Wendy just made about supply side data. I'm with Data2X, and we've long been working with folks on improving exactly this question, supply side data, starting with partnership with Rosita, and now with Deon. But one of the questions that we have, and one of the things we've been seeing, is even when there is supply side data, it's not being acted upon. And so I would be curious just to get everyone's reflections on where that gap is between having the data available and actually acting on it and making those shifts towards financial inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amina Tirana. I'm with Visa. I want to put forward a bit of perhaps a call to action and a challenge. At Visa, we are quite focused on the notion of digital equity and inclusion. And by that, it's not about do you have a mobile phone. It's what is the result of being able to participate in an increasingly digital economy. That is the key differentiator, we believe, going forward for how well you as an individual and your family are doing. And our hypothesis, our belief is that there are three things needed together: access, trusted convenience in your financial services, and also then the know-how and the skills. And it's wonderful that we're hearing the same thing from everyone in this room. So this is all great, but how do we make that happen? And to that end, I want to put forward perhaps a call and an open invitation for more conversation, which is how do we partner with unusual bedfellows and also our closest clients and other partners to plug the gaps in know-how and knowledge in our institutions. Because what we're finding and what we believe is that the delivery of both the skills and the trust comes from the peer community, right? That's that local level. I'm going to stop there. I'd love to hear from our partners, but the last thing I'll say is that Visa and DevX are launching a detailed report on this. We wanted to hear from the people who know, the development community. So DevX went out and asked more than 1,000 of development experts their views on how do we move this forward. And the call to action here is we need to be much more agile. We need to be much faster. We need to be much more local, which is also very challenging when you're trying to scale. So thank you.
Thank you, Amina. First time seeing you in real life. This is so cool. Oh, is that her? Rosita, do you want to bring some comments? No? Okay. We're going to have to wrap the conversation soon, and we wouldn't dare do that without calling my friend from Ethiopia to the stage and giving her an opportunity to talk. Eden Tadesse, CEO of Invicta. and really someone who's galvanized the local ecosystem in Ethiopia, focusing on these very same issues. Will you please grace us with a few words, focusing on local women's economic empowerment and what the actions of the global community can do to help further support and bolster the work you're already doing on the ground?
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Eden, and I'm an entrepreneur from Ethiopia. It is with distinct pleasure that I stand before you all today, speaking on behalf of the WDFI Advocacy Hub, an initiative that I am sure will create more opportunities for young female entrepreneurs, such as myself, from Ethiopia. I began forging a path for myself in the digital economy when I was only 14 years old, and I'm very proud of all that I have been able to achieve in the digital realm. But success never comes without its fair share of challenges. And the challenges that I continue to face, such as low access to financial services, literacy, and poor digital infrastructure, are challenges that are shared by many young entrepreneurs today in Ethiopia. As I stand here today, 12 years later, I fully acknowledge that women continue to be disproportionately affected by these challenges. Being an entrepreneur is not an easy choice, less so for a woman from a low-income background. This requires both personal and professional skills and demands access to financial resources and technical solutions. Being a digital entrepreneur essentially became my livelihood, a way for me to become financially independent and achieve self-empowerment. Through my work, I have seen firsthand the difference that skills, confidence, and a network of support can make to empower women. In my organization, Invicta, it's an award-winning career development platform that supports refugees and internally displaced people in 83 countries around the world. We support refugees with career development, entrepreneurship, and financial inclusion. And 53% of the more than 30,000 refugees that we support are women. And at Invicta, we are working really hard to bridge the gender digital divide and ensure that women have equal access to financial tools and education needed to thrive in the global gig economy. A few years ago, I was delighted to see that Ethiopia had developed an ambitious digital transformation strategy called Digital Ethiopia 2025. And I was extremely enthusiastic about the fact that the strategy was showing a commitment towards harnessing the country's massive untapped banking and IT sector. I strongly believe that this is an incredible opportunity to leverage more women and the role that digital financial inclusion means for them. Yet I think more work needs to be done on this particular area. For far too many people in Ethiopia, I am considered privileged for the mere fact that I am digitally connected, an active user of mobile money, and able to monetize my skills and knowledge online. But does it sound like a privilege to you? Because for me, it's a human right. Because we are in the digital age. That means by default, we are entitled to consume, learn, create, and access digital and financial services that are available to us. And women should absolutely not be left behind in this conversation. So then, why are we? Today, I am proud to be a digital transformation ambassador for the European Union Delegation Office to the African Union. Through this appointment, I have experienced the value that global platforms can bring to share experience, gain knowledge, and connect with like-minded entrepreneurs. I have been proudly waving the digital inclusion flag for as long as I can remember. When Google was hosting the largest tech conference in Ethiopia in 2013, I was invited to attend as a keynote speaker, and they told me I could talk about any subject that I wanted as long as it was related to tech. And I decided that my topic was going to be Introduction to Digital Revolution and how you can be part of it. It was my way of showing other young, ambitious Ethiopians that the digital ecosystem presented endless opportunities for education, business, and more. The WDFI network of champions that works in parallel with the Ethiopia Coalition is a perfect example of a channel that is designed to amplify the diverse voices of young champions and advocates who are passionate about making a difference in their communities. As a WDFI Advocacy Hub champion, I am delighted to announce that in November, the WDFI Ethiopia Coalition will be launching a digital financial literacy campaign, which I urge you all to support. The objective of the campaign is to ensure women's digital financial literacy is a priority for the revised National Financial Inclusion Strategy, and to highlight the role that all partners, including CSOs and the private sector, can play to accelerate progress and build accountability. Being here with representatives of the local coalition in Indonesia and hearing from the experience, I feel inspired to continue the work of the members of the WDFI Advocacy Hub and ensure women in Ethiopia and in other countries around the world are not left behind. I invite you all to join me. We all need women to believe in women's capabilities and invest in solutions that are scalable and adaptable to their needs. We must and should keep building a bridge between local and global stakeholders and use this opportunity to show the world that local action matters and cooperation between global and local partners through initiatives like the WDFI Advocacy Hub are the only way to build inclusive economies and achieve sustainable development goals. When women move forward, the world moves with them. Thank you so much.
I kind of feel as if that's really the note we need to leave on. That was amazing. I loved your point about privilege. That was really wonderful, Eden. Thank you so much. But I'm not going to leave well enough alone. I need to thank all of you. Oh, hey, CJ. I need to thank all of you. So happy that you were able to join us in person. Very much want to thank my Women's World Banking colleagues. You really did a wonderful job in pulling this morning together. Thank you. So Deon told you that Zouera is on many boards, but she left off that really most important board. She's just joined the Women's World Banking Board, so thank you, Zouera. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Revita. Deon, magnificent moderation. Thank you. Moderator is the wrong word for what you just did, I think, but thank you very much for such an inspirational conversation. We have this room for about another hour, and we would hate to have all of you here in one place and not continue to network. So please do stay and talk. I'm also keenly aware that there were questions asked that didn't get answered, so I hope that together in the room we can come to some answers. I see my colleague Harsha nodding vigorously about the data question, so perhaps the two of you can speak. Wonderful to see you, and I hope we will see all of you in Dubai in February. Thank you. Bye-bye.